As Prophet Nuh Alaihis Salam continued his mission to guide his people, his patience and perseverance were tested in profound ways. He had spent years preaching to his community, calling them to worship the one true Allah and abandon their idols. Yet, despite his continuous efforts, his people persisted in their disbelief. They rejected his message, mocked him, and even accused him of being mad. Nuh's unwavering commitment to Allah and his message, however, remained constant. He had been chosen by Allah as the guide for his people, and he would continue his task, no matter the ridicule or hardship. The people of Nuh had become so entrenched in their idol worship that they saw no need for change. They lived their lives in defiance of Allah's commands, worshiping idols made of wood, stone, and metal. Nuh's message of monotheism seemed irrelevant to them. Despite their rejection, Nuh's love for his people and his desire to guide them to salvation kept him devoted to his mission. He spoke to them about the oneness of Allah, warning them of the consequences of their sinful ways, but they continued to reject him. Years went by, and the situation only grew more dire. Nuh, realizing that the people were not going to turn from their ways, called on Allah for help. His patience had been stretched thin, but his faith in Allah's wisdom remained strong. Allah responded to Nuh's plea, telling him that the people who had rejected him would never believe. Their hearts had become sealed, and no amount of preaching would change their course. However, Allah had a greater plan in mind, one that would involve a great trial for both the disbelievers and the believers. It was at this point that Allah commanded Nuh to begin building an ark. This would be the means by which Nuh, his followers, and the animals would be saved from the coming flood. The ark would serve as a refuge for those who believed in Allah and followed Nuh's guidance. Nuh's task was clear: to build the ark in preparation for the divine punishment that would soon strike his people. Building the ark was a monumental task, one that required great dedication and hard work. Nuh did not hesitate. With the help of those who believed in him, he began the construction of the ark. The people, however, continued to mock him. They laughed at Nuh and his followers for building such a large vessel in the middle of dry land. They mocked his warnings, saying that no flood could come to their land. They saw no reason to listen to a man who was building a ship when there was no water in sight. But Nuh Alaihis Salam did not let their mockery deter him. He remained focused on the task Allah had given him, working tirelessly to build the ark. As the days passed, the mockery from the disbelievers grew louder, but Nuh's resolve grew stronger. He knew that Allah had commanded him to build the ark as a preparation for the great flood, and he trusted in Allah's wisdom. As Nuh and his followers continued the construction of the ark, Allah revealed to Nuh that when the time was right, he would send a flood to destroy the disbelievers. The flood would be a punishment for their arrogance, sin, and rejection of the truth. Nuh was instructed to gather pairs of every species of animal, 2 of each kind, so they would also be saved from the flood. This was a sign of Allah's mercy. While the disbelievers would face the consequences of their actions, the believers and the creatures of the earth would be given a chance for survival. Nuh's task was difficult, but he continued with unwavering determination. He knew that the flood would come, and he knew that only those who followed Allah's guidance would survive. The building of the ark became a symbol of faith and obedience to Allah. It was a sign that, even in the face of mockery and rejection, one must remain steadfast in their faith and trust in Allah's plan. The people, however, remained blind to the reality of the situation. They continued to mock Nuh and his followers, seeing the building of the ark as a ridiculous act. They could not comprehend the magnitude of the coming punishment. Nuh, in his patience, continued to warn them, but they refused to listen. Allah had already sealed their hearts, and no amount of pleading or warning would change their fate. One day, as the ark neared completion, Allah commanded Nuh to gather his followers and the animals and board the ark. The time for the flood had arrived. As Nuh and his followers boarded the ark, the disbelievers stood by, mocking them and laughing at the idea of a flood. They saw no reason to heed Nuh's warnings, and they remained in their denial. At the moment when the ark was ready, Allah ordered the heavens to release the rain and the earth to give forth its water. The flood began, and the waters began to rise. The disbelievers, who had mocked Nuh and rejected his warnings, now realized the gravity of the situation. But it was too late. The floodwaters surged, swallowing everything in their path. Those who had disbelieved in Allah were drowned, while Nuh and the believers were safe aboard the ark. As the floodwaters covered the earth, Nuh Alaihis Salam and his followers were saved. The ark floated on the waters, carrying those who had trusted in Allah and followed Nuh's guidance. The flood was a divine punishment for the disbelievers and a means of salvation for the believers. It marked the end of a corrupted society and the beginning of a new chapter in the history of humanity. The story of the flood is one of warning, redemption, and mercy. It teaches us the consequences of arrogance, sin, and the rejection of divine guidance. It also shows us the mercy of Allah, who provides a means of salvation for those who believe and follow his guidance. Nuh's unwavering faith, patience, and dedication to his mission serve as an example for all of humanity.